Welcome to the One Stiletto in the Grave podcast with your hosts, Sonny Ormond and Jane James.
Well, hello, darlings. Are you feeling curious, generous, and joyful today? Well, if so, you're in very good company, because that is the motto of the amazing academic archers, two of whom are chin-wagging with us today. We talk gin, we talk knitting, we talk community, we talk laughter, and oh, so very much more. Here's Janie!
We're delighted to welcome today two guests from the phenomenally successful academic archers, and they are Dr. Cara Courage and Helen Burrows. For any of you who've not come across the academic archers, it's a group of people who use archers' characters and themes to explore issues that are not just in Ambridge but in the wider world. And I have to say, in my experience, they do it with a great deal of humour and a great deal of joy. There's a wonderful annual conference with papers on anything and everything from rural accents to counterinsurgency doctrine in Ambridge. And there are books with wonderful titles like Flapjacks and Feudalism and Custard, Culverts and Cake, which I can thoroughly recommend. So Cara's one of the founders, and somehow, I don't know how, she's managed to fit her academic archer's commitments around her work. She's passionate about the ability of the arts to create transformation in our society, and she also works with organisations to make change that puts people and communities at the heart of the places that they live and work. And Helen's background is as a senior lecturer in social work, and she's presented papers at I think 5 out of the 6 academic archers conferences, including one on using the archers to educate social workers on social issues. She's also an ex-Morris dancer, and she's a wonderful knitter, and her Ambridge cardigan, which she is wearing now, was chosen as one of the BBC's 70 items for 70 years of the Archers. So welcome to you both.
Hello, good to be here.
Cara, can we start with you? How long have you been listening to the Archers?
It's a bit of a moot point. I think like a lot of people, the Archers was in my world as I was growing up, but I wasn't necessarily a listener. It was always on in my grandmother's kitchen, and I come from a farming background, so of course the Archers was on, and it just seems to be one of the constant wallpapers of sound that I associate with growing up. But of course I was a precocious 5-year-old. I wasn't interested in having to be quiet and sit down and listen to this programme. But I did properly get back into it, I think about 20 years ago. Though, of course, time changes and can't necessarily put an exact date on it. And again, a bit of a classic story. I would have Radio 4 on in the background as I was working, and I'd hear the Archers theme tune, and there'd be a reflex in me to go and turn it off. And then I think one day I just got really lazy and stopped turning it off straight away. And that's how it got in. And I suddenly found myself a few months later shouting at the radio at something that a character had been doing. And I was like, oh, okay, that's it. I'm a fan of the Archers. It's happened.
It had got into your bloodstream by then. It has a habit of doing this, the Archers, doesn't it, actually? I'm so interested, Cara, with the academic archers. Can you tell us how it actually came about?
How it came about through a really innocent conversation over Twitter. Myself and Nicola Headlam, who set up Academic Archers, we have different academic interests, but there's a crossover of what happens when a community might be consulted on something that's going to happen in their community. And it was the Route B storyline. And we found ourselves shouting at the radio through the medium of Twitter, going, it wouldn't happen like that. It wouldn't happen. This is what would happen. And then friends of us linked us up and said, you two have got to talk. And so we did. And then through this process of sort of egging each other on, like, okay, so if there were to be a conference, what would the title of one of our papers be? What would we want to talk about? 6 months later, there we are in a room that the University of Liverpool, their base in London, kindly let us use, having a conference on the Archers. We had no idea if anybody was going to turn up. We charged £5 for a ticket. That was just a cup of teas and coffees. And it was standing room only. and there were people sat, every seat was taken. The people were sitting on the steps going up between the seats. There were people standing at the background as well. And at the end of the day, we got a standing ovation. Not necessarily, I don't think necessarily for anything that particular that Nicola and I did. I just think the joy of everybody being in a room with other Archers fans. But we were kind of told, like, you have to keep doing this. And so we did.
Gosh. That is just amazing. So, was it just the power of Twitter? Is that how the information was got out, that the fact that the conference was happening?
It
That
was
is
completely
amazing.
through that Twitter, and then there's some really big and healthy Facebook groups of Archers fans as well. So
Mm,
we got it out
mm.
that way. The BBC have been really supportive of us right from the beginning. I think there's a little bit of a "you're doing what" at the start,
Yes.
but they've come along and they've really, they spoke at one of the conferences as well, talking about the archives that they have on the Archers, which was fascinating. So yeah, a really big sort of social media word of mouth. Um,
Mm.
and people, there's been a lot of people telling their friends, like, you've got to get involved in this, and it's grown in its momentum that way.
And Janie, weren't you at the first conference? Am I right?
I was, and I think the second one, the one at the British Museum.
Oh, that was a
Um,
lovely
and,
conference. I
oh,
loved
it
that
was
one at the
so,
British Museum.
it was joyful. I probably wouldn't be invited back because I remember there was some kefir to taste, and I managed to kick mine over the very nice carpet. So, yeah, apologies if you're not allowed back
We
there
did
because
get
I'd
an
been in there.
email about the amount of kefir that had been spilled during the day.
It was in quite sort of tiny little cups and very, very, very easy to knock over. But no, they're just such joyful occasions. So was it a big surprise to you then how it took off?
To be honest, yes, it was. And I
Mm,
should say, when we say academic archers, it isn't just a group of academics, it's for anybody. And we really think at Academic
mm,
Archers that anybody that listens to the show has that academic knowledge of it, the history of it, they understand the
Mm.
characters, their motivations, they got the sense of that place of Ambridge. It's so rich. In one of the last conferences, I think it was over 600,000. It's a ridiculous number of total years of listening. Now, you cannot say that that isn't an
Wow.
academic, body of knowledge. Um, but
Mm.
yeah, the momentum that we've had through this, and people keep coming back. I mean, the chat that we do
mm,
have about the Archers, as you said in that wonderful, lovely introduction of yours, Jane. We do talk about the Archers and the storylines in it, but we also then say, well, what is that like for us? What is that
mm,
situation like in how we experience things? And we have academics talking, obviously, about something which would be their field of research and interest, but we have a lot of people from their professions coming in and saying, actually, so primary school education, for example, we had teachers coming along to actually say this is kind of the size of school that there might be, and so on and so forth. But people, they're talking about their passion, whether they're an academic or not. They're talking about their passion, and it's really seemed to have caught hold of people.
And so, what actually happens, Cara, at the conference? What's the format?
What happens at conference is a hell of a lot of laughing. And a lot of gin is drunk. At the conference in Reading, we actually drank the bar dry of its gin, and they had to go and get more. So
well
there's a lot
Brilliant.
of laughter and
Brilliant.
socializing, which is great. But
Mm.
we essentially we will take over a weekend somewhere, and people will come from all over the country to come and join us. We are usually staying in the same hotel or near each other as well. So there's another sense of camaraderie with that. We try and buddy people up if they've never been to a conference before, if they're not confident with travel. We'll buddy them up with somebody from their area, and they can come along together too. And some lifelong friendships have come out of that, let alone actually just meeting people at conference. And then on a Saturday, we'll have a day where we are talking about our favourite subject, the Archers. And there is a lot of laughter at characters, there's a lot of laughter at ourselves. But of course, the Archers covers some very serious issues, and those will be talked
Mm.
about too. And we have covered every possible aspect of the Archers that is there. We have talked about, and Helen has been one of our absolute stalwart favourites for delivering some amazing papers at conference. The papers are all about 15 minutes long, so it's
Mm.
not a long thing to sit through. It's always really casual. There's a lot of people that they bring their knitting and their crochet with them as well, which is really great. And things have been created
Brilliant.
from one conference to the next. And Helen is, again, a great part of that with her amazing knitting skills. There's usually, again, another social in the evening. We've got to make the most of the time that we've got together to be together. And then the Sunday morning, we send each other off with a live listen to the omnibus. And I've never heard a room so full of vociferous opinion just being shouted at the radio. It's not just, not just us individually at our homes doing it anymore. It's all of us, 150, 200 of us together shouting at the live, listen to the omnibus. And then we go on our separate ways, but then we continue to meet, particularly on our Facebook group as well.
Okay, that's brilliant. I think what a fantastic format. Do people have to proffer the papers ahead of time,
We
or
do. We put out a
yeah?
call in pretty good time, usually
Mm,
sort of 5 or 6 months ahead. All that we
hmm
ask for, when we say call for papers, that is an academic term, unfortunately, but we're just asking for ideas. And we ask people
Right.
to send in 200 words or so about what they'd want to talk about. Nicola and I, and then a group of the academic archers, our fan group on Facebook, we'll have a look at those, we'll peer review them, and we'll send feedback to people. It's not often we say no to a paper, I've got to be honest, because the ideas that come through are an embarrassment of riches. And we have some amazingly knowledgeable people in our group. And we've had a really huge variety of papers come in. And then so we'll get back to people and go, yes, you're in. And we might theme a session, like particularly when the Helen and Rob storyline was happening. We had a whole afternoon devoted to that. We've also had whole sessions and whole books actually devoted to women in Ambridge and looking at some of the characters and the relationships that the women have. So you might be in a session that is themed, or it might be a completely standalone paper. But you're joining a huge community of people, and then people come along to conference, and they do their wonderful thing, and it's great.
That's great. And do you have a sort of Q&A after each paper as well? Is there a big
We
discussion
do.
about
I mean, there's
that?
been some conferences, and this is particularly thinking of the Helen and Rob one, where we had so many papers that we had to structure it slightly differently because there was so much to talk about in that. And of course, we had to be really respectful to the storyline and obviously what it was based on as well. But there's usually, we will build in a Q&A. But of course, we're with each other all weekend. So the chat just keeps on coming,
Yeah.
through all the
So,
tea breaks, the meals that we have in the evening, walking from the hotel and back to the venue. The chat is constant of the archers and everybody that is there because it is our passion, and we're so happy to be talking about it. Everybody, you can just go up to anybody and go, right, okay, that thing that you said then about Helen, no. Whatever your opinion might be, everybody's up there to be, we're all chatting away.
And just to be sort of really clear, because people see the name academic archers and I think go, whoa, but you don't need a degree to join. It's inclusive, it's open for everybody, yeah.
Absolutely, you don't need any academic qualification to join us. You don't need an academic qualification to be up on stage talking about, talking through your paper. The academic interest, the academic bit, yes, did come because we were academics and going, hold on, from my research, it tells me this, and that isn't what's happening in Ambridge, or that is what's happening in Ambridge. But it's actually just that really fanatical knowledge. We're nerds about the archers, basically. Anybody can be a nerd about the archers. And as soon as you join our group, we call you an academic fellow as well. So you get that academic qualification just by joining our Facebook group. But it has been interesting. Some people have actually gone back into education because they've come along to one of our conferences or read some of the books, been part of this community, and kind of gone, actually, hold on a minute, I can do this. And so some people, quite a gap on from their schooling, have gone back into education. And we had one person go from a BA and then go on to do their masters and now starting a PhD just because of that engagement with academic archers. It's quite amazing.
Gosh, how
Yeah.
wonderful. It inspired them to get back into education again. How
Yeah,
wonderful. How
absolutely.
wonderful.
I know somebody for whom that's true. It just gave her the inspiration to go back into education again, which is it's a big step.
It is. It's a
And
really big step, and it is a big. We do recognise it is a big step to come from wherever you may live to a university base to step into that kind of conference type environment. It's really unknown to a lot of people, so we try and make it as easy for people to come as possible. So there is that buddying system, and obviously it's a huge welcome from us when people come in through the door.
I just, my memory of that very first conference was just you and Nicola just smiling, just, and so welcoming. It was wonderful.
Our
How
So
lovely.
cheeks really hurt after that, for like literally for about
I
a week
I bet
afterwards,
they
because
did,
we were
but
so happy.
what an achievement! What would you like to do with the? Do you have any plans for what you want to do with the academic archers next? Is it?
Well, we do have a next conference, and this is a bit of a kind of you hear it, you heard it here first moment. Our next conference is going to be a face-to-face one, and it's going to
Right.
be next April. So it's the 21st of April for a Friday night drinks and welcome. And then we're going through to the Sunday for the live listen. It's going to be held in Birmingham at the Town Hall
Yay!
and Symphony venue. And we're doing it as a big mashup with Dumpty Dum as well. So the other,
Oh,
Big
great.
Archers podcast.
Yeah.
We've been saying it for years, we should do something together. And we are. And one of the reasons why we're doing it together is this is the first time in a really long time that us as Archers fans have been able to meet face to face. So it's like, okay, let's make it a real biggie. Let's really go for it. We took a year off
Brilliant.
last year because I just think all of us coming through the pandemic and keeping things going through lockdown, we're just absolutely exhausted. And it just seemed too much of a stretch for everybody to do something, but we're coming back with gusto for the next one. So those are the dates. We're going to start to put those out and about now. The call for papers will be coming out really soon. So get thinking on ideas and what you'd want to talk about. I have a feeling that Helen has some ideas already, and we'd love to have Helen back to almost get that clear run through of speaking at every conference of ours. So yeah, that's where all of our energies are focused at the moment. We cannot wait to see everybody again.
And
Brilliant.
how many members have you got, Cara?
Gosh, right, okay. So Helen might know this better for the Facebook group, but it's over 3,500, I think, on Facebook. And
Wow.
to
Wow.
conference, we always get between 150 and 200 people.
Wow. Wow. That is amazing, isn't it? It's just terrific, actually.
Yeah.
And if anybody who's listening now would like to become involved and join, presumably they just go online, do they?
Just go
And
online.
look you
You
up?
just put in Academic Archers into Facebook and you'll find us there. There's some questions that we ask of you just to make sure that you are completely fanatical about the Archers. Just the usual housekeeping for that. We are also, we have our website, academicarchers.net, and all of what we do is up there. But what you'll also find on there is some recordings of the conferences that we've done in the past. So you'll get a really good flavour for us on that. And turn your headphones down a little bit because again, there's a lot of laughter. It does reach
There
quite a
is.
volume, but you'll get a really good sense of what it's like to come to conference and the kind of things that we're talking about.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Well,
I want to
Sunny,
come,
we
but I
should.
can't. I'll have to come incognito. I'll have to pretend to be somebody else or something, won't I? I want to come along. Sounds wonderful.
No, you could
Because,
be
but
you.
you have had, haven't you? I mean, people like lovely Charlotte Martin, Susan, and I think, and Headley, who played Kathy. I think that they've been involved,
They
haven't they, at
have,
various
and
times?
Charlotte was
Mm,
really great because obviously Charlotte is,
mm,
if there's anybody that is really an academic archer, it's Charlotte, because obviously
mm,
she is Susan, but she is also an academic in her own right. And she
absolutely.
gave a really good, it was a fascinating paper about the trajectory of women in the archers and looking at
Mm,
when women started to write the scripts, how that changed, what we were hearing women say, sort of looking at the
mm,
nature of their friendships. That all got a much more in depth, more nuanced, more multi-dimensional environment. And so
mm,
she's been a really great person to have on board with us
mm,
as well.
mm.
So yeah, we've and as I said as well, yeah, the BBC have come in and been really supportive too. So it's those are relationships that we absolutely cherish. We really do.
And I think that's fantastic. I mean, being part of the show, I think to have that relationship with our listeners is just wonderful. It's so enriching for everybody, actually. And I'm sure, I'm just thinking about Charlotte. I'm sure people who've never seen Charlotte before were quite surprised that she was Susan, because I think she's so very different, isn't she, from the character that she plays? So really very different. Yeah.
When you hear her on stage, though, or when she's talking, it's like, oh yeah, there's Susan. There she is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Today's podcast is sponsored by Turtle Doves. Turtle Doves recycle pre-loved cashmere jumpers to make beautiful accessories. Their best-selling fingerless gloves come in a large variety of colours to brighten or complement any outfit. The benefit of keeping your wrist covered throughout the day will help maintain warm, cosy fingers. Other accessories include neck warmers, loops, scarves, beanies and baby booties, all super soft and luxurious to the touch with great eco-credentials. Turtle Doves, the perfect present this Christmas to keep your loved ones warm.
Okay, well, while we'll check our diaries for the 21st of April next year to make sure that we're free to go to Birmingham for that, let's have a bit of a chat with Helen, because Helen, I know you've been listening to the Archers for a very long time, haven't you?
Yes, I mean, it was always on in the kitchen on Sunday mornings before church, I think, so it must have been a different time. So yeah, I remember listening from about 1964, I think, because I'm the same age as Shula, so we sort of grew up as sisters.
You've worn better than Shula, I have to say.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure that she knits, which you do.
And what drew? How did you get involved in the Academic Archers? How did you find out about it, and what drew you in?
Well, I was still working at Nottingham Trent Uni at the time, and I saw a call for papers for the first conference. And at the time, I was supervising a social work student who wanted to understand more about domestic abuse, and I'd suggested to him that he listen to the Archers. And the conversations that we'd had from there, I thought, oh, that's quite a good idea. You could actually use the Archers to teach people about. This was at the time of the Helen and Rob story. So I thought, well, I'll have a go. I might not get accepted, but at least I'll try, and it's good practice writing for a call for papers. So I put in an abstract, and amazingly was accepted. And I was so nervous to go along and do this, but it was the first academic conference I'd ever been to where it was funny. I hadn't laughed so much in ages, and I met some amazing people. My paper was really well received. Everybody was really interested and asked questions, and it sort of went on from there. And then we started the Facebook group up, and it sort of carried on. And being able to write for a book as well. The Academic Archers has led to me having more publications since I left the university than I had when I worked there. Which
fantastic.
is brilliant.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the ones who may continue into further studies, because I've actually now finally started to make inquiries about a PhD.
Have you really?
Brilliant.
I have.
Oh,
yes.
that's wonderful.
That's fantastic.
I've been threatening it for years.
It's really interesting. This issue or business really of the Archers sort of playing out into real life, because I got an email from a friend the other day to say, do you know that my daughter, who's just doing GCSE media, there's just done a whole module on the Archers, and it was to do with the Helen and Rob storyline, the abuse storyline. I thought, God, isn't that amazing? I think that's terrific.
So how did your social
brilliant.
work students respond when you suggested listening to the Archers, and how did you have that dialogue with them?
Well, his mum listened to the Archers, so he was aware of it, and I think he carried on to listen because he certainly, what you get with the Archers is that it's because it's just like a fly on the wall. You hear so many more things than a professional would hear. We go into houses where there's that sort of a situation, um, but you only get a snapshot, and they only tell you what they're comfortable to tell you. But you can understand the background of everything, the context of the sort of life that people are having to lead through listening to things that are going on, sort of in real life, as it were.
Oh,
So it was, yeah, really interesting approach to learning as well. I like finding innovative ways of teaching.
and that really
Absolutely.
is, isn't it, Sonny?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And you also, one of the other papers I think that you wrote was about fandom. Is that right? And in particular,
Yes.
transformative fandom. Now, what is that, Helen?
Well, transformative fandom is when somebody who's a fan of something takes the subject that they're the fan of and turns it into something creative. So you get people who will make all sorts of costumes, like Doctor Who type stuff.
Okay.
People knit Doctor Who scarves, and they will wear costumes at conventions. So that's called cosplay. Um, but you also have people who write fan fiction, and that's transformative fandom. Um, they're taking one thing and turning it into something completely new and usually very wonderful. Um, so I was interested to look at how really the academic Archers does that all the time. I've had people who've written songs. A friend has a version of Jerusalem sung to the tune of the Archers, which I think would
Really?
make a
Yeah.
fantastic national anthem.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, poetry.
There's been some fantastic poetry, hasn't there? A mutual friend of ours, Barbara Williams, wrote a
Mm, mm,
wonderful book of poems about various people in the Archers.
mm, mm. And Janie yourself. I mean, because well, we've got several one woman shows, haven't we? One of which Janie has written, which is beautiful. It's a brilliant show. But I also have my other one woman show, and you've written a fantastic poem about Lillian. Which we constantly have to keep updating.
We
But
do.
yeah, absolutely. It is amazing, I think, isn't it, the power of it? And I mean, talking a little bit earlier about Headley, who played Kathy Perks, of course, she was involved in organising the Archers Addicts for many, many years. And we used to go on
Mm,
cruises, Archers cruises, and it was just wonderful
mm.
meeting the listeners and how transformative actually that was for a lot of people. And they would get involved and we would write a script and they would become part of the Archers. It was wonderful, just wonderful.
Yeah. And Helen, you're one of the moderators of the Facebook group. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, one of the admin.
Yeah.
We
So
took it on. We took on the role to help out Cara and Nick, who were being bombarded sometimes with
I bet.
problems.
I bet. So is it there are I mean there are God knows there's dozens and dozens and dozens of Facebook Archers groups of one sort or another. What sort of community is the Academic Archers Facebook group?
Well, yes, I mean, there are over 70 Facebook groups about the
Are
Archers,
there?
some of which don't talk about the Archers at all. For example, there's Archers Cats, who just talk about cats. There's Archers
Right.
Politics and things. There's some very irreverent uh, groups. There are groups who will only talk about the Archers. And I think what's great about the Academic Archers Facebook group is that we have a set of values. But everybody within the group tends to stick to those values. So it's a group that respects other people's views, and really we can discuss pretty much anything that's linked in to anything that's to do with the Archers. Um, it's it looks at things in more depth than you'll find in most groups.
Mm,
So we don't tend to
mm,
have the, oh, what are the script writers on about? That wouldn't happen. It would,
mm,
that might be said in another group. In the Academic Archers, we might say, well, this wouldn't happen because. and explore the different ways that the story might have changed or might change in the future. So we can look at the future, we can look at the past. We've got people who have incredible knowledge of the history of the Archers. We have some listeners who've been there from the start, literally from the first episode.
Golly.
So it's really like a springboard, isn't it, for more in-depth conversations about things, really, isn't it?
Yes,
I just
absolutely.
want to go slightly in a slightly different direction, because you are the most fantastic knitter. I mean, really fantastic knitter. And of course, that fantastic piece of work, that cardigan that you actually knitted for, the 70th anniversary of the Archers, and it's one of the 70 articles, the Archers have for that year. How long did it take you to knit that? Because the detail is phenomenal.
Right, it took me. I was stuck, unable to do very much because I'd torn a muscle in my shoulder. So I could still use my right hand with a mouse. So I sat down at the computer, and I've got some software for designing knitting patterns. And it took me just over a week to do the chart for it, sitting there all the time. For the body, anyway, the sleeves came on later, and then it took me 4 months to knit it.
Wow.
So
No,
and that
it
was
really
almost
is
full
just
time.
fantastic.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure it was almost
Yes,
full
it was.
time. It's absolutely wonderful.
It's
And actually, anybody out there, if you go onto our BBC Archers website and for the 70 articles for the 70th anniversary, you can see it in all its splendour. It's fantastic, a picture of it. You wearing it, of course, as well.
Yeah.
I am indeed, and although you can't see the name Bellamy because that's on the back.
Oh, but
How
it's there.
appropriate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
We'll have to see if we can maybe use a picture of it to put on our page, because
Absolutely.
it is an
Well,
absolute work of art.
you're very welcome to use the big picture of the back of it. That's fine.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll
Thanks,
do that.
Helen. That's
So,
great.
who would you, Helen, if you were tottering into Ambridge, who would you most like to have a drink in the bull with?
Oh God, well that would have to be Lillian, definitely.
Thank you, darling. Thank you.
Preferably with Jim as well, I think.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I think we could have the most fantastic evening.
Yeah, that would be quite a good one, wouldn't it, Lillian?
It would.
Jim?
We'll bring plenty of gin as well. We'll get plenty of gin in.
Yeah.
That's what appeals to me about this academic Archers, actually. You're obviously all very fond of a bit of gin. That's definitely a reason to be there, apart from anything else.
Absolutely, it is. I'd really be interested in asking Cara that almost the same question, really, if that's all right. Who would you like to have a drink in the pool with, Cara? You don't have to say Lillian. I mean,
No, please.
Lillian would be really good. Lillian would be excellent. Me and Tracy are the same age. We're a month apart. So I do
Tracy.
feel a real soft spot for Tracy. And I think she could have she needs a good listen to, I think, at the moment. So that could be good, a bit of a shoulder to cry on. I mean, there's a bit of a list. I would love Charlie Thomas to walk back into the ball, and I'll sit down and have a drink with him. And I'm loving Jacob as well at the moment. I think to sit down and people watch with Jacob in the bull would be one of the best ways you could spend an evening. I would relish that.
And of course, Jakob would really say it as it is, I mean, he's not bad in coming forward, is he? So that would be very funny, actually, his observations, indeed.
And then, of course, for the gossip, you'd need to have a couple of drinks with Susan, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
And then you'd get it all, wouldn't you? Oh, how funny.
Yeah, well, and then, if you wanted to, you could just sit there and wait for the choir to start as well. You could be involved in the choir as well, for Christmas. So there we go. I mean, all of life is there, quite frankly.
But which choir, Sonny? Which choir?
Indeed, which choir? Indeed.
The battle of the choirs.
Indeed.
Well, I'm really grateful. I hope that this has inspired lots of people who are listening to trot along to the Facebook Academic Archers page or to academicarchers.net, indeed, to find out more about the Academic Archers and to pile up to the conference. It is just, they are just so welcoming and just not like anything. It sounds horrible saying not like anything you might think of as academic, but it's all the good things about academic, which is kind of really appreciating getting into the nitty-gritty of something but without the arsiness of it. Is that that's probably not a very academic term, but it's just absolutely delightful, and we're so grateful to you both for telling us about it.
Absolutely.
And of course, there's all the books to read as well. And
Yeah. And I mean, I think that combination of you guys and the Dum De Dum lot will be
that's gonna be
fascinating in
wonderful.
April. I mean, just will be wonderful. So yeah, I would suggest, if anyone isn't a member of the Archers Academic, get involved now, because I think that will be a wonderful conference. It'll be fantastic.
Definitely. And I'm sure Helen will be giving a paper on something.
Yeah.
Who knows what?
You never know.
It's brewing
Yeah,
now.
it's
You can feel
definitely
it. You can
brewing.
feel it.
So do you want to ask them our final question then, Sunny?
So this is for each of you, maybe Helen first. What would you say to your younger self, Helen?
Oh, that's something I've been
Ooh.
thinking of quite a lot recently. I think
Yeah.
I'd probably say,
Mm-hmm.
don't spend too much of your time trying to prove things to other people. I think that would be a fair one.
And what about you, Cara?
When I was thinking on this question, I think it would depend on what age I was being asked.
Mm.
There's different things I'd say to me at different ages. But having just come through COVID, which wiped me out completely, and feeling really physically depleted, it would be quite a bit of practical advice. And let's just keep going to the gym.
Yeah. Keep as healthy as you
Yeah.
can. Keep as fit as you can. Yeah.
That's a good one. Although in my case, it would be start going to the gym.
No, that's great. How are you doing now, Cara, though?
I'm
you
doing
still pretty
better.
shattered?
I was doing one thing a day for a while coming out of COVID, and now I can just about manage two. But it's taken me by surprise. I can get up the stairs now without having to stop halfway and catch my breath back again. So you really appreciate the small little wins coming out of, any bad illness. But COVID was quite a surprise to me physically.
Gosh. So you were really laid low by it then. When did you get it, Cara?
I got it last week, and I had it for about 10 days.
Oh.
Okay. You've been jabbed, presumably. You had
All
had
of that, had the flu jab, and all up to date with all of that. It was just really bad luck of the draw. But everybody I know at the moment seems to have it again. So it was inevitable that I would come down with it. I spent the whole time when I wasn't sleeping doing crochet. Nothing as huge and amazing as Helen's jumper, but that was the thing that kept me going through it.
Yeah.
Well, we do hope that you continue. Thanks so much for coming when you've been so poorly, and hope that you kind of get back to normal soon. But like you say, it's being kind to yourself, isn't it, in the process, and just taking the recovery gently and taking it seriously. Yeah.
Absolutely. And for me, I hope that someday, some point, I get to meet both of you in person. That would be a complete joy. Thank you so much for coming on
there's
the
always
podcast.
a
We
gin
really
and
do
tonic
appreciate
with Lillian's name on it at the bar anyway at the conference.
Well, you might just see me there, darlings. You might just see me there. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's been lovely to meet you.
Thanks for listening to our One Stiletto in the Grave podcast. If you'd like to see behind-the-scenes clips and bonus content, please visit our Facebook page, One Stiletto in the Grave podcast. And if you'd like to ask any questions, follow us on Twitter at OneStiletto65. This podcast is produced by Raggedy House Productions and the music composed by Tom Smith. See you next time!